There's so much psychological baggage when it comes to eyes in a way that I just don't think people think about noses the same way, even a mouth. When you think about facial expressions, it's just not the same thing. There's so much that happens with an eye that you really have to acknowledge. If you want to learn how to draw eyes, you got to think about these things. You can't just look at it from a scientific point of view. If you just think about the anatomical structure, in my opinion, it's not enough. So here's the thing. If you think about it, when you meet somebody for the first time, let's pretend I'm on the Sherlock set and I'm meeting Benedict for the first time. I'm going to look at his eyes. That's what you look for when you meet somebody, is what do their eyes look like? And sometimes if you're in a phone booth with Magneto and you're having a conversation about mutant wars, you're going to communicate with your eyes, because your eyes are such a big part of human interaction. You think about, am I making eye contact? Am I giving them the, quote, evil eye? Am I looking at them more lovingly? And so eyes, I think, in a lot of ways, they are their own version of communication. It's visual communication. And that's why you cannot just think about it anatomically. You have to think about, what do eyes mean? What is their weight? For example, I know we can't always have Magneto. We have to look at some art history. Otherwise, I don't feel that I'm doing my responsibility as an art educator. This is important. So think about this. Anytime you guys look at a figurative artwork, this is a great question just to ask yourself, is to say, what is the direction of the eyes? Because that oftentimes carries a lot of weight, and it really does influence the composition. I know I talk a lot about, diagonals and getting your eye to move around the page, but really in a portrait, you have to look at which way the eyes are going, because if you don't do that, you're actually missing half the point of the portrait. You guys may have heard there's this term about eyes that, quote, follow you around the room. And there are all kinds of portraits that make people feel really uneasy. Like if you guys have ever been in someone's living room, and let's say there's a giant portrait of King Philip IV. I don't know why you would want a portrait of him. He's a funny looking guy. And poor Velázquez had to paint him like over and over and over again. I'm like, okay, I know that's a good gig. Back then, being the court painter was probably pretty awesome. I mean, you probably had health insurance and all that type of stuff, but you had to paint King Philip IV. And he's just not, I don't know, he leaves a lot to be desired, for lack of a better word. And so if you look at this portrait, you might say, oh, it's a 3/4 view. King Philip IV is turning to the left. But the thing is, the eyes are pointing to the right. And so that really shifts the focus of the portrait. You look at it and you engage with it in a completely different way. So that actually is one of the reasons why a lot of people don't like to buy portraits, is because a lot of people feel uneasy if they're in a room and there's a big portrait. They feel like they're being looked at. There's a certain degree of engagement. Like if I was hanging out with Watson and Sherlock, I might walk in and be like, oh, nice decor, but notice that there are no portraits. People are much more at ease with an image that does not have eyes. There's something very penetrating about that that's important to take a look at. For example, eye contact. I'm sorry. I was up so late just Googling Michael Fassbender GIF, like for hours on end. Anyway, it's research. I'm doing research. So the thing about eye contact, some people are really afraid of eye contact. Like, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but if you're on a subway and you make eye contact with somebody, it's scary. Like you want to look away. Tell me in the chat, how does eye contact make you feel in any particular context? Do you make contact with somebody with your eyes and just look away? Or do you just stare into them like you're trying to control thousands of missiles and kill all the people that are in the ocean? like this, because of course, that's a very important part of life. Or if you think about eye contact, maybe it's just tender and loving. Although, given the situation, I would be like crying because like he turned down Mystique and he's right there. And, it's really sad. The scene makes me sad for Mystique. It doesn't make me sad in general because there's a really good shot. But yeah, I mean, eye contact for a lot of people is tricky. For example, 10,000 Crows says, I'm afraid of eye contact. It makes me very uncomfortable. I feel like people can read my mind. And Anna Banana says, I feel scared because it reminds me that I'm being listened to, which is weird. Although it seems like Elle is embracing the awkwardness. I sometimes find it funny to have a staring contest with a total stranger. And Seven Angelic says, feels like an instinctual response to being watched. Makes you uncomfortable because it could be predators, but hopefully not hanging out in a place like that. And Concuke says, eye contact with people I'm not speaking to makes me super nervous. See, nobody says that about noses. Nobody says, oh, that nose made me so uncomfortable. It's just not the same thing. So I think when you guys are dealing with eyes, you have to realize in some ways it's like a very powerful visual that's extremely communicative. And that's why I'm saying you cannot draw an eye without considering all of these concepts. If you think about eyes, I think actually this is sort of similar to hands. I feel the same way about hands, is that eyes have a huge range of expressions. And again, like other parts of the body, it's so much more dramatic. Same thing, noses don't do anything. Like they just sit there and they look weird. I suppose you could flare your nostrils. It's not really that exciting. So for example, by the way, you guys, we have a weird mix of images. We have like Benedict Cumberbatch and these intense photos by, I can't pronounce his first name, Salgado, who's a brilliant photographer. I know we've been looking at a lot of photographers like Dorothea Lange and Nan Golden. You guys should look at Salgado's work because it is intense. I mean, look at this woman. I mean, this is an extraordinary image. So if you think about that range, even in a situation like this, okay, yes, the figure on the left, I mean, she's looking at you. I feel like she's just cutting me to pieces. It's so scary looking. But then look at the figure on the right, okay? The figure on the right, the other facial expressions are covered up, and you just see this little band of eyes, which actually is interesting because right now in the pandemic, people do have to rely on eyes to communicate because a lot of people are wearing face masks. And so in some ways, more than anything, the eyes are becoming a lot more important. This is an interesting comment from Suncown. Sometimes I start worrying about eye contact rather than listening to what someone is saying. So that's really interesting because what that says is that the communication you're having with the eyes actually overrides the voice, which is quite incredible because you would think that the voice is how people communicate, but actually the eyes are more than that. And Ari's saying, I love eye contact. I'm used to reading the feeling or intention of people on them, and I love that. So you can have eyes like this speaking to your soul, as 10,000 Crows is saying, or they could just make you weak in the knees. I love this GIF, you guys. Okay, well, I have something educational to say. I really do. Okay, look at look at how the eyes, they begin pointing downwards, and you don't see the eyeballs, and then they just open up, and you just, oh, those cute little wrinkles on his forehead. It's just, oh my gosh, so expressive. So sometimes that's what eyes do. They have that effect on you when you're looking at that GIF and you're up until 3 a.m. looking for just the right GIF because, you know, we don't want to get the GIF that does not express the weakness in your knees that you experience. Or maybe your eyes are doing something like a Franz Xaver Messerschmidt sculpture. These are a series of sculptures. They're called character heads, and they're intense. I mean, I looked at a lot of Messerschmitt images when I was working on my following series. And in this case, you don't see the eyeballs, but it's like that clenching tension because you're on some island and you're trying to control a helicopter because Jean Grey is annoying and making trouble. So in that case, you can end up looking like that. Or you're just hot. Oh my God. This is really hard to concentrate. He's so good at that single tear. Oh my God. There's another scene where he does it in Dark Phoenix when Mystique dies. It's just, sorry, that's a spoiler for you guys who have not seen X-Men. Oh my God. Okay, we need to move to the next slide. This is just like way too much for me. Okay. Now, the thing about eyes that I think is very tricky for a lot of people, it's easy to make assumptions about eyes. Like if you ask the average person, you say, okay, what is the shape of an eye? A lot of people, if you ask them to draw an eye, like just a quick sketch, okay? A lot of people will just draw a football or a lemon, okay? That's the assumption that what it looks like. And of course, if you're drawing a quick thing, you're gonna overly simplify it. But the thing is, eyes are not that straightforward. And you guys have to just get rid of these footballs and lemons that you're drawing. Because actually yesterday, what I did is I looked up how to draw an eye because I just was curious to see how other people were doing it, how people are explaining the structure. I mean, mostly to figure out what people were telling people, which is not that helpful in my opinion. And so many of those eye drawings look like footballs and lemons. And it occurred to me the reason it's like that is because they're not really looking at real eyes. They're looking at the idea of an eye, which oftentimes comes across as quite generic and idealized. Look at this, okay? This is a very, very famous photo called The Migrant Mother. It's by Dorothea Lange. Look it up. I'm sure you guys have seen it before. It's so famous, okay? This is not a football or lemon. Neither is this. I mean, it just is not that simple. Okay. Now, of course, that makes your life a lot more complicated because, oh my God, you have to look at what you're drawing. You cannot make assumptions. You can't say, oh, I know what an eye looks like, and then just put it down. You have to observe. Well, I'm glad that you guys are appreciating this fangirling because there's more coming up. This is just the beginning. We're just getting started. Even Piero della Francesca, think about it this way, even in the 15th century, artists knew that eyes were not lemons, and they're definitely not footballs. In fact, they're maybe sardines. I don't know. These are weird looking portraits. I love Piero della Francesca because there's a strange stiffness and formality to his portraits, but they're also wonky and strange at the same time, which I think is kind of cool. Real eyes on real people, they're oftentimes not symmetrical. I mean, a lot of people will say things like that. And a lot of human anatomy feels like that because you're like, oh, I have 2 arms, I have 2 legs. That's pretty straightforward. But the thing is, eyes are so delicate. And so with an eye, if something comes down 2 millimeters, it feels very dramatic. So a shift in an eye is like the Grand Canyon moving 2 feet. It's just really, really dramatic. It's very impactful. And it drives me nuts when I see stuff like this, okay? I'm sorry, I know, I crap on Andrew Loomis all the time. And it's fine if you guys like Andrew Loomis and his system works for you, that's great, okay? It doesn't work for me. That's all I'm saying is from my point of view, I find all the measuring and stuff just really hard. I don't work that way. So it's fine if that's working for you guys. But that's the issue is I look at the Loomis images and the eyes are perfectly symmetrical and it looks weird. I mean, I almost feel like people with perfectly symmetrical eyes, they almost look like mannequins. It's a little bit too perfect. I mean, come on, nobody is this generic. And yes, I know this is just a chart and maybe Andrew Loomis is not trying to show individual people here, but I mean, I don't know about you guys, that chart on the left-hand side, 1/3, 2/3, it just hurts me. Like it hurts my head to think about thinking you can apply a system like that to every person on the planet because people are so different from each other. And I just think, okay, you could argue maybe this is a good foundation, but I don't think you can. There are some people who are just so different that I just think that systems like this only apply to a very small percentage of the population. And so to me, the system's not really worth it, because if you can't apply it to most people, it's not very useful. But again, it's up to you guys. If you like Loomis and it's helping you, that's fine. I know that it's the case for a lot of people. That's totally fine. So look at this, all right? A lot of you guys have probably seen this portrait. It's very famous. It's Amy Sherald's portrait of First Lady Michelle Obama. And you would think at first glance, looking at the eyes, oh, those are symmetrical. They look the same, but they're not, okay? If you look at the eye on the right-hand side, does everybody see there's like a little pocket of white underneath the pupil? But then the eye on the left doesn't have that. And if you guys trace the shape of the eyes, they're not symmetrical. I mean, the one on the left gets a lot wider towards the edge. The one on the right is not like that. So you might say, oh, that's not a big deal, but it is, because eyes are so small that any small shift like that is very important. This is exactly why the Loomis chart does not work. W315 says Adam Driver. Okay, he's funny looking. I got a beef with Adam Driver. I'm sorry, guys. I read in an article that he was on Fresh Air with Terry Gross on NPR. I love Terry Gross. She's awesome. He walked out on her because I guess she showed him a clip of one of his movies, and oh, he doesn't like watching clips of himself. I'm like, dude, you're an actor. Come on, get over it. He walked out on Terry Gross. Who does that? So yeah, I don't like Adam Driver very much. I just thought that was like the most diva-like action. I mean, you can look at eyes and you can really accentuate that. And to me, this has so much personality. I mean, this is how Picasso saw Gertrude Stein. And some people might look at this and say, oh, that's weird and wonky and strange. But to me, this captures personality. And that's what eyes should do. Eyes should be unique. They should say something about the person. They should communicate. They should not be these sterile, accurate anatomical models. You can draw like that, but I mean, I think that's more suitable for scientific illustration, because the whole point is to take out all the emotion, so you're not like crying when you're analyzing the iris because you're studying optometry. You don't want to do that. So in some cases, that crookedness is very important. And I like this comment from Ron Nuck, who says both eyes can behave differently and do different expressions. Yeah, like I look at images of myself when I smile, my eyes are so wonky. Like one of them gets way wider, the other one's a lot thinner. I mean, I look weird when I smile. So that's true. I mean, eyes can really have their own behaviors. Okay, even Lady Agnew, who is like beautiful and regal and oh my God, John Singer Sargent, I hate you. You guys ever look at an artist, you're like, oh my God, you make me so mad. That's how I feel when I look at John Singer Sargent. She had uneven eyes, okay? You look at the eye on the left, it's a lot rounder, and the on the right is a little bit more flat. And so, in my opinion, you need this. You need to see the differences. Or maybe you're a boy and you got bitten by a lizard. I don't know why. Why are you hanging out with lizards? But anyway, Caravaggio caught that moment. So if you guys want to see the full painting, just Google. I did this last night. Caravaggio bitten. I was like, oh my God, this is so weird. I'm such a weirdo. Like all these strange things that I'm Googling for the sake of art education. That's what it's all about. Let's start with the eye socket. The eye socket is so critical. My feeling is that if you don't have an eye socket, you just shouldn't even bother with the eyes. And that's a chronic issue. A lot of people in a portrait, at the very least, when they first start and they haven't practiced a lot, they will draw a portrait and they'll start with the eyes because that's the feature that you notice first. It totally makes sense to me. Okay. And tell me in the chat at some point, or maybe you're still doing it, which is okay because, you know, that's fine. You guys can draw however you want. I really don't care. But I'm just telling you what I think is more efficient and is going to get you results faster. Anyway, tell me in the chat, you guys start your portraits with eyes. Have you ever done that? Have you ever just sat down and said, I'm going to draw a portrait and just start with eyes? I think a lot of people do that. I did that when I did not have as much experience. I definitely did that. And it makes sense because who's looking at a face and going, oh, eye socket structure? Nobody's thinking about that. People are thinking about the eyes. But the thing is, the eye sockets create what is a space for the eyeballs to sit within. So they're very important. And honestly, if you don't have an eye socket, it's like, don't even bother. You just like really don't need that. So the thing about eye sockets, it depends on the person, obviously, but I think a lot of people don't realize how deep eye sockets are. I think a lot of people, they get so caught up with the eyes. And you guys can do this right now. I mean, just touch your eye socket. You can feel how dramatic it is. I mean, especially if you are looking into the face of death, like every Kathy Collins, of course, they're going to be really deep and dramatic. And so that's a really important thing to consider. Scrimp is saying, what makes drawn uneven eyes look normal? Because when I draw, I feel like uneven eyes bothers me. Well, here's the thing. It depends on the degree of uneven, okay? If you're going all Gertrude Stein with Picasso, I mean, that is not going to look normal. That was definitely deliberate on his part, but it's like subtle things. So that's what I was saying earlier, that with an eye, if it's like 1 millimeter, it actually makes a really big difference. It's like that Michelle Obama portrait. It was not that visible, but when you get down to it and you analyze them, you do see that they're a little bit uneven. So when I say uneven, I don't mean like, you know, like that, but something that makes them not quite so perfect. All right, let's take a look at the structure of the eyeballs. And such a cool Durer drawing. Durer is another person. I just don't like that dude. Like, it is not fair that you can draw like that. It's really not fair at all. So we have some comments. Johnny is saying, I used to start with the eyes, but the proportions were sometimes off. Sonali says, I used to do that all the time. And W315 says, really, I start with one eyebrow on the edge of the nose, now that I think about it. Yeah, so what I would do, you guys, is next time you sit down to do a portrait, ask yourself, where am I starting? Because a lot of people don't even think about that. A lot of people, they just start just intuitively, or they have some habit that they're used to doing, and that's fine. But I like to think about building structure like it's a sculpture. And so for me, it actually makes more sense to draw the eye sockets first. And I love this comment from Raphael, filling the eye socket feels satisfying. Yeah, because you can't do it the other way around. You've got to start with that eye socket. Eye sockets can matter more than pupils. I mean, I've seen a lot of portraits and paintings where the pupils are barely visible. I mean, these Alberto Giacometti portraits, which if you want to talk about death stares, this is definitely it. Like, if you want to feel like you are looking into the Grim Reaper, this is definitely it for Alberto Giacometti. But look at this painting. You don't see pupils first. The first thing that I see is actually the lower section of the eyelid, which Giacometti has highlighted. It's very bright and visible, and the pupils really are not that dramatic here. So sometimes that's actually more important. Also, I think it's really important to pay attention to bags under the eyes, because actually what the bags do, they're literally sagging skin that is falling downwards from the eye sockets. And so they copy the shape. And so if we look at this, you can see that that's actually a really close indication to what the eye sockets are doing. And again, like other things, uneven eyes, people are oftentimes afraid to draw the bags under the eyes, but I love them. I'm like, yay! When I see somebody with bags under their eyes, I'm like, yeah, this is gonna be a fun portrait. I honestly think that when people are younger, they're tougher to draw because there's less to hold on to in terms of landmarks. Like if you have somebody who's older and the skin is interacting, it really acts almost as a map or guideline for the face. So you can definitely hang on to that. Well, this is interesting. Raindrops is saying, I tried the technique with eye sockets. My portrait ended up looking like a zombie. It's okay. I mean, if it starts out like a zombie and you revive it, that's okay. But one thing you can try, Raindrops, is I suspect that maybe you were making the eye sockets too pronounced. Like, I'll do a demo later on when we do a draw along, But oftentimes people draw way too dark, and that makes a big difference because then the eye sockets are so bold and they stick out and they don't look very good. So you need to keep them very, very subtle. So here's the thing. A lot of people, once they do get down to actually drawing the eye, they're totally looking at the pupil and the iris. And I get it. I mean, if you look at the pupil and the iris, they're really visible. You're going to see the pupil and iris way before you begin to think about the eyeball as a form. It's very easy to look at that and just see it. By the way, this is Michael Fassbender as an android, but I'm not going to get as excited because he's not hot in this movie. He's just cold and mean and clinical and robotic. It's just the saddest thing. Like, how can you take a person that looks like that and make them so ugly? Like, why does Hollywood always do that? Like, Charlize Theron is always trying to make herself ugly. I'm like, you're gorgeous. Just let yourself be gorgeous. Anyway, I get it. I know why. Because they want to have range and they want to play the same character all the time. And so if you look at an eye, the pupil definitely jumps out. Now, depending on the color of your iris, sometimes the pupil gets a little bit buried. So if you have somebody that has like really deep down brown eyes, you may not really see the iris that visibly, but those are the two things that are the most important. And here's something interesting. Clara Lieu says, when I draw East Asians, I sometimes feel I'm too cautious not to overdo the eye sockets. Yeah, I mean, it varies from person to person. I mean, some people, their eyes don't feel that dramatic. I just think that in general, people tend to underestimate how three-dimensional they are. Because here's the thing, a lot of people, they latch onto the pupil and iris because they're flat, they're easy to recognize. Because the whole thing about structural elements is that structural elements, they're not obvious. An eye socket is not like it's traced onto the eye. That's not the case. But an iris and a pupil, very easy to locate and to identify. So it makes sense to me that people would be thinking about that. Look at this. I mean, you can easily just say, okay, there's the iris, there's a pupil. Now you look like Terminator or something like that. So here's the thing, you guys. You cannot let yourself be seduced and distracted by the pupil and iris. You can't do that. You have to think about form. You have to think about the three-dimensionality of the eye. And that's where people get screwed, because in looking at all of those how to draw an eye tutorials last night, it occurred to me that people just think about eyelids, pupil, iris, and then they think they're done, but they're not, okay? You have to think about the form. It's fine. He's an android, an alien covenant. Ew. He's not hot. I was like, I didn't know that was possible, but I guess it is. If you have the right makeup and you move robotically, I suppose it works out, but what a waste of a face. That just makes me sad. So when you guys think about the eyes, the mindset you want to put yourself in is form. You really almost have to think about yourself like you're a sculptor. Like, for example, this eye socket is dramatic. I mean, this is the Grand Canyon on your face. And I don't think people a lot of realize how much that is. It's so important. So actually, this is a really good exercise. You guys know how when you go to a museum and there's all these ancient Greek sculptures and none of them have pupils? I mean, some of them do. Sometimes they'll like carve it out to make like fake pupils, but most of the time they don't, okay? So you have these like creepy faces just like staring into space. So if you look at Greek sculpture, I like the Hellenistic period. You guys can look at whatever you want. By the way, I think there's a typo in there. Anyway, if you remove the pupils and the iris, actually you see the form. And so if you look at these Hellenistic Greek sculptures, they don't have pupils and irises, and you see past that and you look at the form. Really, really helpful. So think about the eye as a sculpture. If you guys think about it as a sculpture, you're going to be in great shape, because it's a big mistake to just think about it as a series of lines and flat shapes. I mean, Constantine, you are weird looking. This was like the strange transition between ancient Rome and the Middle Ages, where they were just like stylistically confused. So they ended up with these strange bulgy eyes that were sort of Roman looking? Look this up. This is a huge sculpture of Constantine. I think it's like 8 feet tall. I saw it when I was in Rome. Like the head is 8 feet tall. I'm not just talking about the whole body, but they're really bulgy. And if you look at sculpture will show you that, okay? Sometimes in a painting, it's tougher to see that because it's two-dimensional, but this is really what eyes are all about. So this is my recommendation. Again, this may not work for you, but I do find that prioritizing the upper lid helps me figure things out, because I feel like if you establish the upper lid first, you can really work things around it. Because to me, the lower lid, it's not that it's unnecessary, but it's sort of contingent. It depends on the upper eyelid to exist. And there's a couple of ways to think about that. By the way, I love this actor. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Hansu? Anyway, he's like mesmerizing. Like, I don't think he's hot, but he's got like intense eyes. I love his eyes. This is really funny. 10,000 Crows is saying the sculpture had anime eyes, and so did Seven Angelic. You guys, I'm never going to look at the head of Constantine the same way after that. That is so hilarious. Oh my God. So establish the upper lid first. And here's why. Because the upper lid folds over the lower lid. It's not the other way around. So in my opinion, the lower lid, it's like tucked underneath the upper lid. So if you guys look at, okay, here's the upper lid, which is quite dramatic. And then look at how the lower lid, it's tucked underneath. So look at that relationship. A lot of people, they just connect the eyelids, but they're not like that. One is actually over the other. It's a very important overlap in terms of anatomy. A lot of anatomies overlap. It's like this muscle is underneath this one wraps around this one. So you really have to think about it from a three-dimensional point of view. And it is important to think about, okay, does this person have a double upper eyelid? And it really varies. Like some people have very thin, subtle double upper eyelids, like Michelle Yao, in which case sometimes you can barely see them, like especially if they've got mascara like caked on, it's actually really hard to see. Or if you're Idris Elba and you're in the Thor movie and you've got scary cat eyes, the double eyelids can actually be a lot more bold, or they can just be hot. See, here's the thing. I have to like control myself, because if I have too many Fassbender slides, I just can't focus. In fact, a lot of my drawing students, there was this one summer, I was teaching at pre-college, these high school students. Anytime they wanted to distract me, they just would like say his name and I just would like lose it during crit. But come on, he's got really nice pronounced upper eyelids that are double. Yeah, like here's an example from Mintine, who says, I never realized the upper eyelid folded over the lower one. I just connected them. Yeah, a lot of people do that. I mean, it makes sense to me, because if you're not looking carefully, it's a very easy thing to miss. But if you are aware of it, you will actually take the time to look for it. And that's the whole thing about anatomy. So much of it is just learning what to look for. It's like if you're not looking for the tensor fascia lata, you're not going to. It just is not going to exist. Yes, I know, Isan. I have a problem. I have a serious problem, you guys. It's so bad. Oh my God. And you guys don't help. You guys make me want to do it more, which is like so not healthy for your art education. And then you have to remember other people have single eyelids. So that's another thing to consider. And you know what's really, I think, incredible, and maybe not in the best way, is that actually in Asia, double eyelid surgery is extremely common. I mean, I don't know why you would ever do elective surgery, because surgery just scares me in general. But the idea that you would undergo surgery to make yourself have double eyelids is really nuts to me, because it's like, wow, that's a lot of surgery to make that happen for something that's cosmetic, something that you don't necessarily need for health reasons. So yeah, anyway. The other thing, let's talk about pupils. Pupils and irises, actually. Let's just talk about them as a duo, okay? If you have pupils and you want them to look natural, you really have to embed the pupils underneath the upper eyelid. And a lot of people don't do that because, again, they get seduced by the iris and they go, oh, the iris is a circle, so I have to make a circle on the eye to make it look like an eye. But that's not true, okay? Actually, if you're Diego Rivera and you have an upper lid, that's the upper lid. And then look at how the pupils are under the upper lid. I know this is really creepy, but I'm just trying to illustrate a point because otherwise Frida Kahlo's painting does not totally explain it. But this is the difference, you guys, okay? Actually, 10K, I have not watched Jane Eyre this week. I know, what's wrong? I've been really busy this week. I know. Some things take priority, like you guys. I love all you guys. I want to teach you. Or you're going to end up with eyes like this, and it's very common. I mean, I see this a lot whenever I do portrait exercises in my drawing classes, that people draw that perfect circle for the iris, and you end up with this like deer in the headlights expression. Tell me in the chat, have you guys ever done this? I totally have done this, where you're like, oh, iris, circle. And then it's like, whoa, that is like really, really creepy. Okay. Or like this. Okay, Elijah Wood, you're kind of cute, but you got creepy eyes. Lord of the Rings. I don't know. I mean, maybe some people think, because I remember my sister watched this movie many years ago, and I really distinctly remember this. I don't know why. She said, that actor has the most beautiful, glowing eyes. I'm like, really? I think he's creepy, especially when he's like looking at Sam and going, oh, Sam. It's such a silly relationship. But anyway, they look like this. They look like weird and really, really strange. So you can have these eyes that almost look like they're just popping out. And sometimes it's not what you want. If you're trying to do it, obviously that's fine. But a lot of times people just put that together. The lower eyelids too. I think because I just told you to prioritize the upper ones, it's easy to go, oh, lower eyelids, not a big deal. But they are a big deal. They're very three-dimensional, and you definitely can't let that go. You really have to sculpt the lower lid. Think about it that way. Like Seven Angelic is saying, yeah, you notice it pretty quickly because your portrait looks very surprised. And here's a comment from Sonali. I have dimples in the inner corners of my eyes. Gets so hard to draw whenever I'm doing self-portraits. Yeah, I mean, every single face is so totally different. You just cannot make assumptions that, oh, all eyes are like this or all noses are like this. It doesn't work that way. Like Margie's saying this really well, eyes aren't flat or circles. Add bone structure and strong flabby muscles. Anything is possible, even expressions. David is asking, will you cover surmising? I don't know what that is. You got a little emoji there, so maybe it's something funny. I don't know. You're going to have to explain it to me. Look at the eyelids in these Roman sculptures. I mean, they were into their eyelids. They were sculpting them. They were making them deep and dramatic. You really have to think as a sculptor. I know that sounds strange because a lot of people are drawing portraits as two-dimensional, but you have to think like a sculptor. All right, let's talk about soft tissue in the eye. I love this painting by Peter Paul Rubens. I don't usually like his work that much. I feel like all his women look like they're made out of tapioca. I don't know, they look all weird and blobby. I mean, that's fine. I know back then that was the beauty standard, but they're weird. I love this painting though of Medusa. So a lot of people miss out on this, which is they go, okay, iris, pupil, and then you have the lids. But the thing is, the little bit of tissue that's next to the eyeball, because the eyeball is round, but the eyelids are not. The eyelids fold over the eyeball. So this is like a little tiny bit of pink tissue. Now, depending on some people have a lot of pink tissue, like it's very, very visible. Other people, you barely see that, okay? But it is something to acknowledge and to look for. And if you don't see it, that's fine. But if you do, that would be very, very important. Grumble Snake is saying somehow thinking of eyeballs as spherical wasn't always maybe clear to me. Yeah, I think about it. Eyeballs are spheres, and they're embedded underneath the eyelids inside the eye socket. I mean, if that's not sculptural, I don't know what is. So I love this painting because do you guys see the tissue and the eyeball? It's like glowing. It's so creepy. I mean, I love this painting and like the color of the skin. Oh my God, like Peter Paul Rubens, how did you do that? It's like limey olive green with these creepy touches of like bloody tissue next to the eyeball. David Pena is saying, is that the tear duct? It's not. I think the tear duct is like the little tiny round. Well, it's not round. It's like a little minor bump. It's so hard to see on the lower lid. This is just like filler. This is like tissue filler in the background. And PKMN says, I always have a hard time with painting eyes when the veins are visible. You know, we're going to get to the veins. So at the end, I will talk to you guys about how to do that because veins are tricky. They're very hard. And this is cool advice. Katzen says, I found it helpful when I started drawing a ball and then eyelids on it. Yep, that's another way to do it because you are literally constructing and placing one form on top of another. Now, here's another section that is very commonly misunderstood, which is the whites of the eyes. Technically, I think it's pronounced sclera. Anyway, the whites of the eyes. We can just call it that. It's a little bit easier. And a lot of people, again, it's like in your head, you say, oh, that part of the eyeball is white, so I should draw it white. Again, it's that assumption that, oh, eyes are footballs and lemons. They're not, okay? The sclera, you think about it as white in your head, but it's so rare that it's white. And here's why. There's the sclera, in case you guys are wondering what I'm talking about. Because they're just so cute sometimes, like especially when you're rolling your eyes. I mean, I do a lot of eye rolling. In fact, my daughter got in, well, she didn't get in trouble, but they noted on her report card that she was, quote, working on eye rolling. I was like, yeah, I don't know where she got that from. Like, yeah, that is not observed behavior at all. Look at how cute he is. He's like, oh my God, I haven't watched Sherlock. I've been trying to take a Sherlock break because, you know, when you watch a show too many times, it's not as fun. So you have to take a little bit of time off, right? Oh, this is interesting. Raindrops is saying best sample for an eyeball is a billiard ball. It's round and has a middle circle that acts like the pupil. Very cool. Oh, okay. So C. Cantrell knows more about tear ducts than me. Absolutely. If you look close to the nose on the rim of the lower lid, you can see a tiny hole. That is the tear duct. Okay. Very cool. All right. Now, here's the thing. If you don't observe the way that a sclera really is pretty dark in a lot of situations, you're going to end up with an image like this. It's creepy. Have you guys ever seen portraits like this where people like don't do anything to the sclera at all and it's like on a white piece of paper and it's like, whoa, that is creepy. Okay, like do not make your scleras so that they are glow in the dark. It's weird looking. Okay, so again, I think so much of the issues here with eyes, it all comes down to assumptions. Like people say, I know what that looks like. You don't. You guys ever draw something and you're like, I really don't know what a banana looks like. You know, you're like drawing the banana. You're like, weird. You're like, I didn't know bananas had this. Observation really gets you to understand what things actually look like. Because a lot of the times, I think when we're just walking around in real life, we just gloss over things. We say, oh, that's a bush. I know what that looks like. But a lot of people never stop to really look at the bush and to appreciate everything about it. All right. So usually the reason why the sclera is not bright white and glow in the dark is because the upper eyelid casts a shadow because the eyes are deep inside the eye socket. So you can almost think about the eye socket as like one of those storefront window tops, right? A roof, little storefront roof that then casts a shadow onto the sclera. So there's the sclera and it's dark, you guys. I mean, that is definitely mid-tone gray, if not darker than that. Gladys is saying, I tried drawing hair. Let me tell you, it looks so unnatural. And by the way, we are going to have a stream about hair coming up pretty soon because I get a lot of questions about that. So definitely we'll be discussing that. Now, another thing to consider too is lighting. lighting really affects how you look at eyes. Tell me if you guys have seen this photo before. This is a very famous photo by Steve McCurry. It was on the cover of National Geographic many, many years ago. This was before the internet. I mean, I imagine, oh my God, what would have happened if this photo came out now? It's so famous. So yeah, this is a really dramatic image. And you got to look at, how does the light interact with the eyeballs? Because that dramatically affects how you're going to be drawing things. So one thing that you guys will notice, usually because the eyes are glossy and wet, you will have these super dramatic highlights. Okay, so if you guys look at this image, you see those bright highlights, they move across the eyeball. Okay, now depending on the lighting situation, the highlights might not be that big. Sometimes they're tiny. It really depends on the lighting situation. But in some situations, in a lot of situations, the highlights do go across. And so this is, again, where people get confused, because actually the iris and the pupil are really separate from this highlight. It's like the highlight really goes right on top of it. And that's where you have to look at the three-dimensionality of the eyeball to get that coming across. So think about that as moving across the eyeballs. Don't just like paint your little dot of white gouache. You have to really think about how that actually works. Oh yeah, and Raw Nook, I did read about this. Steve McCurry did it again after many years. He tracked the woman down and asked her husband to allow him to photograph her once more. And you guys can look this up. It's on National Geographic. So yeah, Karen is saying Stephen McCurry. Okay, this is one of my all-time favorite paintings of eyes. Oh, I hate you, John Singer Sargent. You're so annoyingly good. At least I wasn't born in the same time period. I'd be so mad if I lived during his time period. That'd suck. So here's a painting that he did, very dramatic. Ellen Terry, who was an actress at the time, on stage as Lady Macbeth. Very tall, gorgeous, just sumptuous clothing. But for me, it comes down to the eyes. Those eyes are out to kill. And we know Lady Macbeth was literally out to kill. She just didn't want to do it. She made Macbeth do it instead. And I feel, to be comprehensive, I need to explain to you guys who Lady Macbeth is. You want to know who she is? This is who she is. Okay, there she is. That's Lady Macbeth. Okay, now you guys know who Lady Macbeth is, right? Okay, yes. Yeah, this is really, it's called the Scottish play. And there's this whole myth that you're never supposed to say Macbeth. You're supposed to say the Scottish play, which is pretty interesting. So yeah, she's evil, and she made Michael Fassbender do all these horrible things, and then he felt bad, and everything went to crap. So yeah, that definitely happens. So look at her. The highlight moves across the eyeball. So the lighting on an eyeball is its own thing compared to the iris and the pupil. The iris and the pupil are doing their own thing, okay? The highlight does not care what the iris and the pupil are doing. So you have to think about eyeballs not just as spheres, but they're soft, they're squishy, okay? Imagine, I don't know why, you have a real eyeball in your hands. It would be soft, it would be smushy, and they're wet, okay? So they're glossy. You have to think about that. And that is so different than skin, because skin is opaque, and you do have to think about the variation of texture there. I don't think a lot of people think about that. I think a lot of people just say, oh, iris, pupil, but you have to think about the textural quality and how different that is. I mean, it's sort of like if you guys ever have dry eyes, like think about how much that hurts. You're like in pain if you have dry eyes. And so you have to keep your eyes wet, soft, and juicy. And wet and reflective. Oh, they're so pretty. It kind of makes me sad to look at a picture of Benedict without his cheekbones, though, because so much of it's the cheek, and the lips are so nice. But we're looking at eyes right now. So another thing to consider in terms of wrinkles, because depending on who you're looking at, wrinkles can be pretty visible, especially on the edges. So usually you have them on the edge and they fan outwards, okay? And that's pretty much across the board on most people. If they get older, they will go out in that direction. Because I think the thing about wrinkles is a lot of people don't realize that wrinkles have structure. I mean, you would not think that that's the case because people just think, oh, they're just cosmetic, and they are, but they do have a structure because wrinkles actually follow the form. Like the wrinkles actually follow the eye socket. Like if you guys look at this, do you guys see the wrinkles, how they follow the form of the eye socket? So everything is integrated, okay? The skin is not just draped on there. It actually fits the form and the structure. Oh, this is good. I should have referenced Minority Report. I love that movie. Yeah, oh my God, that eyeball scene is so horrible. If you guys want to see something really gross, just like go watch Minority Report. By the way, you guys, if you're going to draw eyes, and if you can, I really, really think it's better to shoot your own photos if you can. I know sometimes you can't, but it makes such a big difference because the thing about lots of eye references online is that usually the quality is really bad. And in my opinion, if you want to really draw eyes, you're going to need mega high resolution images. Okay, so these are reference images that I shot myself. This is working with a model for a project I was doing many years ago. And it's like, you will not get images like this. And what I'm going to do later today is I will update the Art Prof Flickr reference photo collection with just tons of images of eyes. So you guys can practice. And so we can use them for the draw along that's coming up pretty soon. Oh, they have a name. I didn't know that they were called crow's feet. That is really cool. Oh, okay. I just called them fans. But crow's feet is way cooler. I like that a lot more. Very cool. Okay, so for example, you guys can see this is my reference photo in the upper right-hand corner. And this is actually a detail of one of the portraits that I did many years ago. And it's like, there's no chance I would have been able to dig as deep as I did into the drawing if I didn't have that level of reference. So this is super important if you guys really want to learn how to draw eyes well, because the references, they're not great. Okay, let's talk eyelashes, okay? Eyelashes, people, again, they underestimate them. They think they know what they look like, but eyelashes are very unusual. And again, it depends on the person. Some people have eyelashes that are thicker, that are smoother. Some people, their eyelashes are going all over the place. So of course it depends on the person. But I'll tell you guys, this project that I worked on really taught me how to draw eyelashes because these were huge portraits. These faces that I drew were about 4 feet tall. And so I really had the space to draw eyelashes because honestly, unless you have fake eyelashes, most of the time you can't really see them. On an average portrait, most of the time they are not really necessary. And a lot of people put them in when they really are not that big. Like, have you guys ever done this? I'm sure you have. I did it. Is you're like, oh, eyelashes. So you put them in and they're like 2 inches thick because the eyelashes are way too big and thick for the size of that eye. Most of the time, eyelashes are not that visible. Oh, this is so funny. We have all these different names. Otis is saying in Brazil, they are called, quote, chicken's feet. And David is saying patas de gallo. Oh, very cool. I didn't realize that there were so many names for that. So remember, eyelashes curl outwards, okay? And they don't all go in the same direction. I think a lot of people think, oh, they all go up, but they don't. Does everybody see how the eyelashes in the middle, those go straight out? But you see how you get closer to the edges of the eye, that they start to go a little bit more to the left and to the right. So you really have to observe the direction and motion of the eyelashes. Does everybody see why you need high-res images? Like, you could not see this from something on Pinterest. Oh my God, there's so many cool names. Like, okay, Blue Wolf Spirit is saying caterpillars. Raindrops is saying pilicmata. And Hong Shu is saying fishtail. That is awesome. I had no idea there were so many ways to talk about those wrinkles on the side. Now, here's another weird thing about eyelashes, which honestly I never noticed until I did those drawings, is that eyelashes, they connect at the tip. Isn't that weird? Like they start next to each other and then they do this. And they sometimes cluster in weird ways. And again, it depends on the person, but that is the general direction they go in. The only eyelashes that don't do that are fake ones. And so they're very weirdly structured. Oh my goodness. Izan says Kedutan in Malay. That is really awesome. I'm sorry. I'm probably totally mispronouncing all these names, but I really appreciate you guys telling me that. The other thing is that eyelashes are different lengths. Some of them are much longer than others. So do you guys see how the ones in the middle, they're much, much longer? And then the ones on the side are almost not there. So there's a tremendous amount of variation in eyelashes that I think people just gloss over. They don't notice because they don't have an image that is large enough for them to really see that. So this is one thing that I did in my portraits that I think helped me a lot, which was to shift the thickness. So you'll notice in this drawing, the eyelashes, some of them are pretty thick. So I laid down the crayon pretty hard. And then you can see on the side, these are like thin eyelashes. Okay, so I drew those lines a little bit thinner because eyelashes, they're not the same at all. Lewis is saying, I was coached by my professor about not seeing eyelashes in my reference, how I should have used artistic license to make sure I sell the portrait. I mean, you can try that as a training thing. Like if you want to just really work on eyelids, I think that's fine. But I'm not a really big fan of eliminating parts to understand others, because I think what happens is you end up losing a sense of the whole. And I'm really into that more holistic point of view. But again, if it works for you, if it got you the results you needed, that's the most important thing. Oh, this is such a good way to describe it, Karen. Eyelashes are almost a bit random, like grass. Yeah, for sure. That is so important to think about. All right, we gotta talk about veins. Like eyelashes, you rarely see veins, okay? Especially if you're doing a portrait that's like a life-size head, really, unless somebody like has bloodshot eyes, they're probably not going to be visible. And so if you're drawing like a huge portrait, of course they might show, but I'll tell you, I have rarely drawn veins. And like, I'm trying to think about all the portraits that I've done in my life. I don't know that I've ever really drawn the veins. And if I did, it was extremely minor, really important. So we have some thoughts about eyelashes. Freya says, I've seen portraits with even eyelashes. They look weird, very unnatural. Yeah, that's why fake eyelashes look strange. They're like too perfect. And they look really stiff for that reason. And Gulce says, I was also told not to draw eyelashes separately. I thought of them as a unit. For sure. I mean, everything is a unit on the human figure. It's all about those relationships and how one thing goes to another. And this is good advice from Rivershy. Veins are better left for hyper-realism. Well, but it depends also on the scale or if it's relevant. I mean, sometimes there's veins and you don't always need them. Like, I really don't think you need veins unless it's like a huge eye or it's an extreme close-up. And even look at the veins on this eye. You see how there's one in the middle that's very pronounced? And there's a whole bunch of other ones that are very, very light and barely there. I mean, it's similar. I think a lot of people make the veins all the same, and that does not work out. You know how I know this? Because we made an eyeball cake for my daughter when she was in 2nd grade. It was awesome. We did such a good job. I was so excited about that. Well, I can't take credit. I just made the cake. My husband did all the decorating. He did all the veins and everything. If you guys draw veins too dark, you're gonna end up with this. It's gonna be like a Halloween toy. So veins, they are best left, I think, is not even there because they're too small, simply. Or if you do put them in there, maybe put them down and then lift them a little bit so they're not quite so pronounced, because they do look really, really weird. Yeah, very, very funny. Art Prof has a podcast. It's available on Spotify and also on iTunes. In a few minutes, I will be hanging out in the Art Prof Discord in the post live streams channel. If you are not in the Discord, I highly recommend that you guys get in there because it's just a like big time nerd art party. It's really, really cool. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and join the Art Prof family. And thank you to our top Patreon supporters for making all of this possible so that we can keep Art Prof 100% free and available to everybody. And thank you so much to everybody for joining me for this fangirl session. I just have so much fun here. And for all your contributions to the discussion, all your questions, you guys really help me out so much. It really is like a collaborative lecture in a lot of ways. And I just love that. So everybody, thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.